This is Conversations with Broadleaf. I'm Lisa, and I'm here today with Lenny Duncan, who's the author of Dear Church. Lenny, I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about who you are and about that book and how it came about.
I'm the Reverend Lenny Duncan, and I currently serve as the pastor of Jubilee Collective in Vancouver, Washington, right across the river from Portland, Oregon. So it's not that Vancouver and it's not that Washington you're thinking of. And I currently serve as a mission developer pastor for Messiah Lutheran Church, and we are launching a new thing called Jubilee Collective. That's gathered around three simple ideas. What if queer folks are exactly beloved the way they are by God and absolutely nothing has to be changed about them, and in fact we should be following their leadership? What if God is particularly, or the Creator is particularly concerned with justice in this world, that if we show up of spaces where people are seeking justice, we'll experience more of God? And then the third thing is to create a space that where if Jesus Christ showed up, he would dance with joy out of just the welcome and the hospitality of it. So we're trying to declare a year of the Lord's favor in downtown Vancouver. We're doing that through a mobile ministry. We're in a van. We have a generator. We have big speakers. We like to feed people. We give out clean needles. We hope you come knock on the van for condoms, and we also show up at protests. We also preach and offer the word and sacrament to folks. So that's sort of where we're at. And I'm a black writer from West Philadelphia, black queer writer from West Philadelphia, particularly concerned with the state of black writing today. So.
That's awesome. Thank you for that introduction. Can you talk a little bit about Dear Church as a book project and how you approach that project and sort of the story of that book?
Yeah, so Dear Church wasn't a book I intended to write. I approached Broadleaf with a different book that's actually going to come out soon called United States of Grace. And the challenge was, why don't you talk a little bit about where you see the church going in the 21st century? So, this is a book, to put it in context, that was written 2.5 years ago. And at the time, it was as far as I thought I could get one particular denomination to move on the question of white supremacy. So the entire premise of the book is that if the Christian church in America does not engage in the practice of dismantling white supremacy within its own pews and then taking that work out into the Republic or the streets of America, there will be no Christian witness in America in 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, when I wrote it, I said there would be no Lutheran witness in 50 years. And I've since changed that, and I don't believe there will be a Christian witness in the North American continent in the next 50 to 100 years if we don't engage in this work. So that's sort of the idea that it came from. And this idea that if we dismantle white supremacy, that white supremacy is like the grandfather demon or the boss of all bosses, the don of all dons or whatever, right? That whole patron-client system that so many of our theologically, trained folks are familiar with. If we attack white supremacy, well, then we start to deal with queer phobia, we start to deal with toxic masculinity, we start to deal with capitalism, we start to deal with all these other things. It drills all the way down.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the premise and where it came from, and it's written in this sort of love letter, almost didactic style.
Yeah. One of the topics that you cover in the book is the necessity of making reparations before we can move to reconciliation. That church folks really like to talk about reconciliation, but what we really need to be doing first is reparations. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that now. One, if there are communities or examples, either in a church context or in a broader context, that you think are doing reparations well, if there are any. And then also if you could talk about, in an era right now in 2020 when so many well-meaning white allies are ready to kind of put their money where their mouths are, what are some untapped opportunities where we could be making reparations? And what would you say to that?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is particularly with the folks who would be watching this, who are particularly interested in black writing and black art. They need to understand that black writing is such a Black writing is so policed, and it's not even policed by the people you work with. Like, you're my editor, right? I work very closely with you. But the way that publishing is set up, Black thought has always been policed, put in certain boxes and in certain spaces. And then there are opportune times to present Black thought as if it is, this sort of niche thing that doesn't really affect you, but it's kind of nice to read. And sometimes when you want to feel better about yourself, it's in a weird place in literature.
Yeah.
And so I would say start supporting Black writers, start to support their independent stuff. I have a Substack blog. I know a ton of other folks who have Substack blogs. That's the first thing is you want to make sure that you're always trying to center Black thinking and Black thought and Black intellect, particularly if we look at the prophetic way. James Baldwin and several other, Langston Hughes, others have really kind of laid out the course that this republic is on, continues to stay on, and is not changing from. Theologically, reparations are incredibly important because white Protestants are obsessed with the idea of reconciliation, and we have to get past that, right? When I say we, because if I pronounce something like that, then they're my people, and I understand them, and I'm under the same judgment. And this church, in particular the ELCA, needs to put their money where their mouth is. Recently I've been saying that we need to defund churchwide. We need to defund these institutions until they are willing to put at least 10% of whatever they make to the cause of reparations to Black Americans in this country. And that does open the conversation of what we owe our indigenous siblings and other siblings who have been in this church. That absolutely does. But Black people in this country have always been the canary in the coal mine for freedom in this republic, and it's very important to pay attention to what happens to us. And so reparations, the repairing of the damage, I think what most people need to understand is that the covenant with Black America has been shattered. And one of my good friends, she always says, she's a pastor, and she always says that you can always tell the big stuff, the important stuff, the covenant-like stuff when it's broken, because it can't be fixed. It has to be totally remade, repaired, reborn. Reparations are part of that process. It's an admittance of we were part of the shattering of you, and now we're going to invest in your independent building up of the community you want to see in this country.
Yeah.
And so it's incredibly important that the church lead the way in little ways. So, the church can't pay reparations. We know that. We know the church is struggling, but the church can do little things. Instead of I always talk about this, instead of repairing a stupid organ, in your church, why don't you just set up a college fund for Black women, not just to go to seminary or other some self-serving kind of motive like that. Why don't you show the rest of the community that not only can reparations happen, not only can it be a part of, there's more than enough money there. It's all God's money anyway. Once you start showing people that, and that we can live like this as the church in small ways, those vibrations, those patterns, those sacred stories get spread throughout your community. And then all of a sudden you start finding other institutions willing to do it too.
Yeah.
And so in particular, this is an important question for us to ask. I mean, there are prices to be paid. Is there a price to be paid for grace? No. Is there a price to be paid for collective liberation in this country, for equity, for justice, for freedom? Well, yes, those prices have always been steep.
Yeah. Yeah. So if folks want to find your Substack, and if they want to find information about that second book you mentioned, United States of Grace, where can they go? Where's more info?
Yeah, UnitedStatesOfGrace.com. With Dear Church, last time I had everything scattered everywhere, so I put everything in one place. It's the UnitedStatesOfGrace.com. You can pre-order the book there. You can sign up for my Substack. You can keep up with events where I'm speaking. I'm still doing a lot of speaking. I mean, I did do the Festival of Homiletics and a few other things from my living room, but hey, I'm still speaking. I was in North Carolina last night.
Yeah.
So you can keep up with everything there. And if you ever need to contact me, you can go through that page, and there's some folks there that'll get you in touch with me.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for this conversation, Lenny. Thank you for your writing, your contributions to Black literature. and the way that you are pointing us toward true reparations. I'm grateful to be with you today.
Thank you.